Welcome to Pearls in the Valley. We are here again with Hall of Fame coach Scott Glabb. Thank you, Coach, for being with us again.
You're welcome.
Well, last time, if you missed it last time, Coach Glabb told us a little bit about his early childhood wrestling experiences all the way to college. So after college, Coach, since you had such a remarkable winning record, where did you go from there?
Well, I graduated and my plan was to go back to my old high school, like I'd mentioned, and I volunteered there for a while. And then my old high school coach recommended me for his job because he was moving on, but they had hired somebody else, somebody they said that paid their dues. And at the time, I was also dealing with some self-image issues. I didn't realize it then, but a lot of it had to do with growing up with a father that was alcoholic, a lot of issues with rejection. And I got depressed, and then not having a purpose or having a job to feel like you're worthy didn't help. And so my depression started to get worse as the years went on. I did sub and I did volunteer coach. And in the summers, I sold snow cones, but to make ends meet. But eventually, the youth pastor that I'd mentioned earlier in the first episode, Mike Miller, talked me into admitting myself into a psychiatric care unit on a 5150 so that I could see somebody and get on some medication instead of waiting around for a month or two for an appointment. 5150 is when you're a danger to yourself or somebody else, and they put you in a psychiatric care unit, a different wing of the hospital, where you're there on a 72-hour hold. So there's no way I'm getting out until the 72 hours is up. If they think I'm capable of leaving, some people end up staying weeks, maybe even months. I got there and they took away my shoelaces, my belt, my watch. They said it was so I wouldn't hurt myself or try to injure myself with it. And they tried taking my virginity. And I said, hell no, you're not taking that. I'm keeping that. So,
So who
anyway,
was that? The other people in the institution?
no, it's just a joke.
Oh, okay. I forgot you're a comedian on the
Yo,
side.
I'm trying. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, they put you, it's weird. They don't have a wing for depressed people. They put you in with everybody. So you're schizophrenics and you're psychotics. They put you in there with everybody and then you start to feel worse about yourself. And one day I was sitting there eating breakfast and this blonde older lady stands up and just pulls her underwear and pants down around her ankles and just stands there. And it's just like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? I met with a psychiatrist and he diagnosed me with obsessive compulsive disorder, and they put me on some medication and they were going to release me. And I knew that I had to do something after I got out. It was one of two things: end it all or get my life together. As I was checking out of this psych ward, a kid I had in an 8th grade class that I taught came up and said, Mr. Glabb, what are you doing here? And I said, oh, I just wasn't feeling well. And he says, neither's my mom. We're checking her in right now. I go, hey, well, don't let her sit next to the blonde lady at breakfast. Stay away from that gal. So anyway, after I got out, I did some therapy, group therapy. Probably the most embarrassing part, I had 2 college degrees and I went on welfare. And at the time, I felt very ashamed for that because, I was always one of those kids that had a job at 12, always worked my way through high school and college. And at this point, I just didn't have the capacity mentally to work. And so it was pretty embarrassing to go on welfare. And then my girlfriend just said, hey, what do you got to lose? Why don't you move down here to California? And I had a sister that lived here. So I went down there in my little Datsun pickup and hauled my snow cone machine down there and kind of was starting to sell snow cones to make ends meet.
And that's at Santa Ana?
Well, I was in Huntington Beach. So I was working, I got a job subbing and coaching at a school named Marina High School in Huntington Beach. But, it never really paid enough to get by. And then, in the summers, you don't work. So basically selling snow cones in the summer was my gig. And I would just go to different stores and ask if I could sell. And I was at a Kmart in Lake Forest and I had a great day for selling snow cones. I might have made $80 and I would put them in this little cigar box that I had. And I accidentally put the cigar box in the back of my pickup truck. And as I was going down the 405, I looked in the back of my mirror and I saw all these $1 bills flying out the back of my car. And as dumb as I was and desperate as I was for money, I pulled over and tried to chase those $1 bills down. But after every car would go by, they'd fly further and further back down the
Oh my
405.
gosh.
So, yeah.
So this kind of goes hand in hand though with it. It seems like when you're trying to find your purpose and trying to find what God wants you to do, it was it was frustrating, but it was also when you're not smack dab in God's will and you're praying to get there. I mean, where were you spiritually? How were you trying to deal with all this, everything from depression to just running into dead ends every time you were trying something different?
Well, it's funny because that's what I leaned on most during that depression is my faith. I was going to church a lot more, going to Bible studies. This might not be something most people would believe in, but it was a spiritual warfare. I really felt there was some battles going on, and I was having some demonic dreams and a lot of sleep paralysis at the time. And I went to a Bible study and they laid hands and prayed for me and those dreams went away. So that helped. But
Yeah. And I believe that because I feel like a lot of times right before you walk into God's purposes and plans, I mean, you get attacked spiritually big
mhm.
time.
And it felt like that. And I didn't know God's plan. I guess maybe the devil had some kind of idea of it, but I was really
Mhm.
into the word and really trying to walk in faith during that time I was depressed. So it's hard because you just don't understand why you're going through that when you're trying to live such a faithful life with the Lord. And then I
Absolutely.
continued doing that down here in Southern California, going to church with my sister and got involved with a smaller church. But that's where I got all the therapy. A pastor named Mike Perkinson counseled me for 3 years through my depression and helped me come to terms with childhood trauma with my father and his alcoholism and how I didn't feel worthy or I couldn't measure up to what he wanted me to be. So it just helped me understand all that. He was really good about kind of taking me through it nice and slow. I saw a lot of therapists up until that point, and none of them really helped me like Mike did. So it was more of
Mhm.
like a spiritual type help and a mental help because he was a
Well,
pastor.
yeah, and also that's also goes to show you too that sometimes, even pastors struggle in their own faith and are they really making an impact or helping people? But it's also you see here that in this situation where it was a spiritual mentor that helped you get on solid ground and get your life planted and going in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, he did. And it all came down to one thing, all I wanted to do was play catch with my dad. That was it. I just, I wanted him there for me. I wanted him to come to my wrestling matches and my baseball games, and he didn't have the time. So it helped me understand that. It helped me to be able to cope with it, how to deal with it. And I was still, I still battled with the obsessive compulsive disorder, but I was able to cope with it and live with it and be able to get a job and work and be fulfilled. So,
Yeah.
but you
Well,
still had to deal with it and stayed on the medication and yeah.
so do you think going back to that struggle that you had about wanting your dad to be there and just wanting him to be at a game just to say good job, whether you win, lose, or draw, your parents are there, your dad's there supporting you, saying, you did great. So do you think that really played into the part where, eventually you became a Hall of Fame coach? Eventually you mentored so many kids. Do you think that that was one of the things you said, they may not have a father, I didn't
Mhm.
have a father, but I'm gonna be there for them.
Absolutely. After it's funny because I can just go up to a kid and ask him what things are like at home and if he has a dad at home, and they're very transparent and they'll let me know. Man, this year I have maybe 4 different kids that live with grandparents that aren't living at home with parents at all, and all of them have totally different situations of why they're not living with their parents. So yeah, so then that you have to come in and hope to fill those shoes a little bit, show them a little compassion, which I learned after going through that, but yet set expectations and instill discipline and commitment because a lot of those boys don't understand. Make your yes be yes and your no be no. You need to follow through with what you say you're going to do. Several of them just come and go as they please, or that we had a tournament this last weekend and a few kids didn't show up. So starting Monday I got to take them to the side and just spell it out for them. If this is something you really want to do, then we're going to need a commitment from you. So you see a lot of that where they lack that discipline and loyalty to a program. But we can get that from them down the road once they kind of buy into it. And then they
Yeah,
realize somebody cares. A lot of it,
right.
they don't, haven't had a lot of consistency in a male role model in their life. So they're not expecting one from me either.
Well, after going through all those struggles, how did you end up at Santa Ana? Where did that come in?
So I was still dealing with my depression. I was 26. I quit the job I had at Marina. I just didn't feel valued or respected there. And I looked all over Orange County for a job, and then somebody had recommended Santa Ana. And during the early 90s, it was a rough place. It was boarded up. It was a tough place to even drive through. And so somebody said Santa Ana was looking for a coach, and I just said, I don't like even driving through that place. But when you have no other options and everything is narrowed right down to only one thing, you have to, show up and look into
Hey,
that one thing.
it was a real open door.
Yeah, because there was no other doors open. A lot of people don't take us younger coaches serious. You see a young coach and he comes in and they don't think you're going to do a good job, or that you don't have the tenacity or the brain power to be able to be a coach. And so I think I was looked at that way too, that, oh, you're just a young guy, we want somebody older that has more experience. And but I had a lot of ambition, and you know didn't like to give up on things. So yeah, I walked in and the athletic director said, "You're hired." And I said, "You didn't ask me any questions." And he said, "Nobody else applied for the job. So you're it." And then they
Yeah.
worked on getting me a teaching position in the school.
And you had already had your teaching certificate, so you were ready to go.
So I had what was called a emergency credential. I had a teaching certificate in Washington, but it didn't transfer down into California. It allowed me to get you know, a supplemental credential, but not a full credential. So I couldn't be hired as a real teacher. So I just had to be a long-term sub for a few years. And I always had this idea that I'm going to go back to Washington. So I never really tried to finish up any school here. There's a lot more classes California makes you take to get a teaching credential than most other states. And so I just didn't have the the desire to go back to school, spend the money, and try to work on that, because I always thought, oh, I'll just go back to Washington. This isn't permanent.
Yeah. So when you got to Santa Ana and you were hired as a wrestling coach, so going straight in, there was a first class wrestling gym and you had like probably 20 amazing wrestlers straight out the gate?
No, we did have a wrestling room, but we had to share it with the dance team. So that meant us rolling the mats out every day and rolling them back up. I may have
Uh,
started with about 20 kids. Most of them didn't have any experience at all. Some didn't speak Spanish and I didn't, or some didn't speak English and I didn't speak Spanish. No habla español el gringo. And they said, no habla español English el chapo. So anyway, that was tough. That was the hardest part, is being able to communicate with them and parents when I didn't understand the language. So I'd always have to find somebody to interpret for me. They had a lot of excuses, which some were valid. They had to go. It was a different culture. They had to go pay for the phone bill, and I just said, "Why don't you just put a check in the mail?" And they had to go to a doctor's appointment and interpret for their mom. And there's just a lot of things I just didn't understand about their
mhm.
culture. And yeah, you couldn't really hold a lot of them accountable if you wanted to fill a team together. I mean, you could kick them all off for all their excuses, but for me, I just wanted to put a full lineup out there, 14 kids, no matter what their experience was, because you know that was just my goal. I wanted to have a team. A lot of coaches just like to coach individual kids, where they might have one or two kids that are really good and get them to state. But I was more focused on coaching a whole team, and being able to fill a lineup and go to another school and not have to give away 6 points for a forfeit if I didn't have to.
Right.
We did have one bright spot on the team, a sophomore named Alonzo Reese, who was very athletic. And you always need like one kid you can hold out hope for. And then that can kind of keep your motivation going as a coach. And he was a great leader. So he was able to get other kids to kind of follow.
That's good.
But other
So how
than
did your first season go as coach at Santa Ana?
oh man, we were just getting in our league. We were losing 76 to nothing, 53 to 8. We were just getting hammered. We beat other schools, kind of the same demographics as us, but anybody that came from an affluent area, any schools out of an affluent area or middle class area just hammered us. So it was ugly. It wasn't any fun. I remember on a Friday we went to one tournament. I had a full lineup. We got out of school early, and of course we got hammered. And then the second day, half the kids showed up, and I don't understand this. Where's everybody else? And one kid said, "Glad they just came yesterday to get out of school early." And I'm going, "Oh my gosh, this has got to stop." So that was a real tough thing to fix. Hey, if we're going to a 2-day tournament, they're more than happy to leave school early, but to wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning, that's the thing about wrestling. It's so hard because I had to get up yesterday at 5:30, meet the kids at 6, get to weigh-ins at 7, wait around for 3 hours till 10 o'clock till the tournament starts. I only had 4 kids that wrestled, so I had to wait till like the 157-pound division, and now it's noon before anybody even gets out on the mat and wrestles. And then we finish up at 7 o'clock. They're really long days. And so I can
Yeah,
understand a kid's going, I don't want to get up at 5 in the morning on a Saturday and sit around for 10 hours in a gym. It takes a real special kid to want to do that every weekend on top of
right.
wrestling your league matches during the week. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's when my kids, decided they were gonna go join the swim team one year,
Mhm.
and, I was so glad they didn't like it. It took all day long. It was terrible.
Yeah, so they're a lot the same, and they wanna work out early in the morning, right? Those 6 o'clock practices.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm definitely not doing 6 o'clock practices, I like to sleep in too, so if I have to do a practice on a day off, it's 10 a.m. at the earliest. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, so after that first year when you were, y'all didn't do too well as a team, what were you thinking at the end of that year?
Well, my girlfriend, I made the biggest mistake after I was going through all this therapy and I was getting better. I looked at her and said, "Hey, so I don't need to be with you. I want to be with you because I didn't want this codependent relationship that we had. I needed her, she needed me. I don't think she liked hearing that. I think she was one that felt she needed to be needed. And she goes, "Well, then I'm going to go up to Washington. I'm moving back to Washington to go help my family because they were pretty dysfunctional." And I said, "Okay, well, that was March." And I said, "I'll meet you up there in the summer. I'll quit my job at Santa Ana and I'll go up there in the summer." And I did. And by then, when I got up there, she really didn't want to work things out with me. And, I went and got another coaching job at another school. I was waiting for my Washington State teaching credential. I was helping a friend out where he was working, but really I got there and it wasn't the same. Friends had moved on, church was different. I don't know. I just kept wondering what would it be like if I would go back to Santa Ana, or if I stayed at Santa Ana, what would have happened there? And that kind of kept me in my
You were
head.
kinda like Jonah in the wrong spot, huh?
Yeah. And then I would call and go, "Hey, did you guys find a coach yet?" And then my assistant coach said, "No, we're still waiting for you to come back." And I would say, "No, that's not going to happen." I finally just decided I would go back. I guess a word from the Lord just felt it on my heart that, if I stayed where I was, maybe things would have gotten worse for me. And so my friend had a little 914 72 Porsche that he gave me, and I packed it up and drove back down to California and stayed with a friend of mine and got my job back right away at Santa Ana and just threw my whole life into coaching there.
Wow. Well, that's exciting. I can't wait to hear the rest of it because it's definitely all over the place, and it's
Hmm.
trying to find exactly where God's called you to be, and I'm excited to hear where you feel like you finally knew I was at the right spot, and I needed to stop running and start really focusing on this job at Santa Ana and the kids
Sure.
at Santa Ana and seeing what God was going to do through you. And obviously, we know you're a Hall of Fame coach. We know the
Mm.
end result, but it's interesting to hear the story and how you got there and
Yeah,
all the different valleys and the different heartaches you went through and all the pressure and the pain that you went through to
absolutely.
actually make that solidified decision. So that's going to be exciting to hear, and
Appreciate it.
I'm glad you're willing to come back on and keep telling your story.
No, I love it. No, yeah, I want people to hear it. So our coaches out there, we need more wrestling coaches out there. It just seems like they're really, really hard to find now. So I'm hoping
Mhm.
that some people might be able to get motivated or take an opportunity to maybe try coaching wrestling, though it's very difficult. It's extremely rewarding as well. So yeah, hopefully this way we can reach a few people that might change their mind and get back into coaching and changing lives.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we appreciate it, Coach, and I look forward to having you back on the next episode.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All
Thanks,
right.
Jared.
Absolutely. If today's episode inspired you, I want to invite you to be a part of something bigger. We're currently producing a feature film on Coach Glabb's life, his journey, his impact, and the God who shaped every step. If you'd like to support the project, you can give or learn more at redpearlmission.org. That's redpearlmission.org. Your partnership helps bring stories like this to the world. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so you'll never miss a new episode of Pearls in the Valley. We've got more stories on the way, especially with Coach, more triumph, more faith, and more pearls born out of pressure. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.